In a quiet village surrounded by towering mountains and wide, open fields lived a young boy named Thomas. To most people, he seemed like an ordinary child, always polite, quick to smile, and eager to help others. His laughter was warm and sincere, and it often gave the impression that his life was simple and carefree. In truth, however, Thomas carried worries that weighed heavily on his young heart, worries shaped by circumstances he could not control. Thomas lived with his parents in a small, aging cottage near the edge of the village. The house was modest, with creaking floors and thin walls that let every sound pass through. His father worked long hours as a carpenter, often returning home exhausted, his hands rough and aching from years of labor. Despite his hard work, the money he earned was never enough to keep the family comfortable. Thomas's mother worked as a seamstress, carefully stitching clothes late into the night by the dim light of a lamp. Her income helped, but it barely covered the most basic needs. Each morning, Thomas woke to quiet conversations between his parents. They spoke softly, believing he was still asleep, discussing unpaid bills, shrinking food supplies, and the fear of what might happen if things did not improve. Though his parents tried to hide their worries, Thomas felt the tension in the air. It followed him throughout the day, making it hard for him to feel at ease, even during moments that should have been joyful. One morning on his way to school, Thomas noticed something that stayed with him. A group of older children surrounded a boy from his class named Peter. Peter wore thick glasses and walked with a noticeable limp, and because of this, he was often mocked. The cruel words and laughter made Peter shrink into himself, his shoulders slumped and his eyes fixed on the ground. Thomas felt a sharp pain in his chest as he watched. He understood what it felt like to carry silent struggles. Though he felt nervous, Thomas gathered his courage and stepped forward. He told the bullies to stop and firmly stood beside Peter. Then, in a simple but powerful gesture, he offered to walk with Peter to school. That small act changed everything. Peter accepted, grateful not only for the protection but for the kindness behind it. As the days passed, the two boys walked together each morning. Peter slowly opened up, explaining how difficult school was for him. Because he could not see the blackboard clearly, he often fell behind, and instead of receiving help, he became the target of jokes and teasing. Thomas listened carefully, realizing that everyone, no matter how they appeared on the outside, was fighting a battle of their own. At school, Thomas faced challenges too. He was hardworking and eager to learn, but his thoughts often drifted away from his lessons. Worries about his family filled his mind, making it hard to concentrate. Math, in particular, became a source of frustration. No matter how much effort he put in, the numbers confused him, and each mistake made him fear that he was failing not just in school, but in life. Eventually, his fear of falling behind pushed him to ask for help. One afternoon, Thomas stayed after school to speak with his teacher, Miss Adams. With honesty and embarrassment, he admitted that he was struggling and felt overwhelmed. Miss Adams listened patiently, then reassured him that asking for help was a sign of strength, not weakness. She explained each problem slowly, breaking it down until it finally made sense. With her encouragement, Thomas began staying after school regularly. Over time, his understanding improved, and so did his confidence. He learned that progress did not come instantly, but through patience, guidance, and persistence. Despite these small victories, the troubles at home continued to grow. One evening, Thomas overheard his parents speaking in anxious whispers. They talked about overdue rent, growing debts, and the real possibility of losing their home. Hearing this made Thomas feel helpless. He wanted desperately to fix everything, yet he knew he was just a child. Still, he refused to surrender to despair. He remembered his grandfather's words, spoken long ago with quiet wisdom: every problem has a solution waiting to be found. Holding on to that belief, Thomas decided to act. He began taking on small jobs around the village, mowing lawns, washing dishes, running errands for neighbors. Each coin he earned felt like a step toward hope. Yet no matter how hard he worked, the money he brought home was never enough to solve the larger problem. Still, he did not stop trying. One afternoon, while walking home from school, Thomas noticed a flyer posted on a wooden fence. It advertised a local talent show, with a grand prize large enough to change his family's future. Thomas played the guitar, and although he had never performed for an audience, he felt something stir within him. It was fear mixed with hope. When he told his parents, they hesitated. They worried that losing would break his spirit. But Thomas explained that trying was better than doing nothing at all. Seeing his determination, they agreed. Thomas practiced every day, sometimes until his fingers ached. He poured his emotions into his music, his fear, his hope, and his love for his family. When the night of the talent show arrived, the village hall was filled with people and excitement. Standing on stage, Thomas felt his heart race, but as he began to play, the nerves faded. He sang with honesty and passion, letting his story flow through every note. The audience listened in silence, moved by the raw emotion in his voice. When he finished, the applause filled the room. Although Thomas did not win the grand prize, his performance touched the hearts of everyone present. Inspired by his courage, the villagers came together to support his family, raising enough money to help them through their difficult times. As Thomas embraced his parents, overwhelmed with relief and gratitude, he understood something important: success is not always about winning. Sometimes, it is about bravery, kindness, and the willingness to keep going even when things seem impossible. From that day forward, Thomas faced life's challenges with renewed strength. He knew the road ahead would not be easy, but he also knew he would never face it alone. With hope in his heart and determination guiding his steps, Thomas continued forward, stronger, wiser, and ready for whatever came next.